Okay, so what we want to kind of go over here is how a business system or any system actually works. So what we're going to do is cover a few points on the system to see or to give you kind of some sort of a program, I guess, or some way of seeing systems as an overview. So maybe you've seen your company, maybe it's the first time you're working on your company and you're trying to figure out how a system is actually built or what it consists of or is made of. So that's kind of what we're going to go through. Now, to do that, we need kind of the basic points of a system, like the core root of what a system is. So a basic system involves a trigger, an action, and then a result. So every system is made up of those points. Now, a lot of times you can have multiples of those three inside of a system. In other words, this trigger triggers another trigger, which triggers another trigger, and then this one has an action, and then this result backs out and backs out and backs out. So the way to see that, or the way to understand that, would be to write it as think about it like the system for taking notes or to outline something. So an outline consists of number one, and then it has a subpoint 1, 2, 3, and then it has number two, subpoint 1, 2, 3. But that outline system that's used, that most people know how to use, that outline system could have one point and then a subpoint, and then that subpoint could have other subpoints, that subpoints could have more subpoints, all the way down through there. But ultimately, it's all a part of that number one section. So when you think about building a system, it's the exact same way. You have sales system, and then underneath that is like taking a call, which has a trigger, an action, and a result. And then that result triggers another trigger that is trigger, action, and result. And then the same thing repeats again, repeats again, repeats again. Now, when you're building the system, the results are basically determine what is the next program that fires. So maybe you've seen some of those flow charts and you're like, hey, I want to use some of that in my company. So when you're outlining a flow chart or the flow of a system, what you want to do is to write the top one, like this is a sales system, and then you're like, what's the first thing that's going to happen? The phone's going to ring. Now what are we going to do? What's the action? Trigger is the phone ringing. Now what's the action? You answer the phone. What's the result of the phone call? And when you get to that result, it could be positive or negative. It could be, I talked to them and they didn't qualify. So that is, if the result is didn't qualify, that triggers something else. If the result is they did qualify, I need to send them over more information, that's the result over here. If the result is, you get the idea. So you have to figure out each one, and then each result is the beginning of another run or another system, like another trigger, action, result. So each one of those does that. So when you're building a system of any kind, which can be something as simple as a task list, or as complex as a sales system, or even, pricing out a project, or, figuring up a price for a customer. How does it start and how does it come to an end? And each time you do that, or each time you build these programs, you're going to get better at actually visualizing that whole system coming together. Now, I will give you something really important here. When you're doing this, you want to leave nothing to chance. So a lot of times it's like, well, I don't know whether the customer is going to end here, here, or here. Well, a system has to know what the result could be. So you have to map out every type of result. And sometimes you have to cram people into one result or the other because that's the way the system is. So when you're dealing with hiring somebody to do the system, they're going to be looking for a recognizable result when they're when they're working the system. In other words, it can't just be like yes or no. They need to have several answers like yes, no, maybe, pursue in 3 weeks, something like that. You need to be a little bit more user friendly on your actual selections, even if the no, the maybe, and pursue in 3 weeks all go to the same trigger. You need to have good selections to make sure that they're picking one and they can actually go to the next one. So that's the user-friendly side of building a system. But basic system setup, trigger, action, result, that's the way you want to do that. And again, it's all built in just like an outline.